The dust of the village was a physical weight on Zara's shoulders. Every morning the rhythm was the same, the rhythmic thud-thud of the pestle, the smell of wood smoke and the bleating of goats. To her mother, it was the sound of home. To Zara, it was a funeral march for her youth. She stood before a cracked mirror, tracing the sharp line of her jaw. Her skin was the color of burnished copper, untouched by the expensive serums she saw in magazines, yet glowing with a natural radiance that made the local boys stumble over their words. Wasted, she whispered. It wasn't just vanity, it was a conviction. She felt like a rare diamond sitting in a bowl of common pebbles. When she went to the market, the heat felt like a personal insult to her complexion. She complained about the price of tomatoes, not because she lacked the coins, but because she felt she should be in a world where prices didn't matter. Her mother's warnings felt like anchors. Contentment is a virtue, her mother would say, her hands calloused from years of labor. But Zara didn't want virtue, she wanted visibility. She wanted to walk into a room and feel the air change. She watched the horizon, waiting for a sign that her life was finally beginning. When her friend Lena spoke of cousins who came back broken from the city, Zara only heard the echoes of failure. She wasn't them. She had the face, the body, and the ruthless edge of a girl who knew she was meant for more. The village wasn't a home, it was a cage, and the bars were made of poverty and low expectations. She was just waiting for someone to leave the door ajar. The encounter with the old woman at the crossroads felt like a cliché Zara didn't have time for. The woman's eyes were milky with cataracts, yet they seemed to pin Zara to the spot. "A door in your future," the crone had wheezed, "a trap beneath it." Zara's reaction was a sharp, mocking laugh. To her, the trap was staying in this village until her skin wrinkled and her dreams dried up like raisins. She told Lena about it later, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "If she can see the future, why is she still wearing rags?" Zara asked, fanning herself with a leaf. Lena didn't laugh. "Maybe the trap isn't the city itself, Zara. Maybe it's what you're willing to do to stay there." Zara rolled her eyes. The village morality was so stifling. They spoke of greed as if it were a sin, but Zara saw it as fuel. Without that hunger, she'd be just like her mother, proud of her character while her back ached from pounding yam. That night, she stared at the stars. The sky over the village was vast and clear, but it felt small because it was the only thing she saw every night. She imagined the city lights, neon, harsh, and electric. She didn't care if they were fire, as her mother warned. She was tired of the cold. She wanted to burn. She wanted to be the flame that drew every moth in the country. She lay on her thin mat, her mind already miles away, constructing a version of herself that didn't know the smell of goat dung or the taste of dusty water. The warning of the old woman was forgotten, replaced by the intoxicating scent of a life she hadn't yet lived. The car arrived like a shimmering mirage. It was sleek, black, and cost more than every house in the village combined. When the door opened, Nadia stepped out. Zara's heart did a strange somersault of envy and awe. Nadia, who had been a quiet, average girl in school, was transformed. Her hair was a waterfall of silk. Her clothes were cut to accentuate every curve. Her skin looked like it had been polished by angels. "Is this really you?" Zara gasped, her voice sounding thin to her own ears. Nadia smiled, a perfect, practiced tilt of the lips. "Life has been kind, Zara." As they hugged, Zara smelled a perfume that cost a month's harvest. It was the scent of success. But beneath the hug, Zara's mind was whirring. She looked at Nadia's designer bag and the way she moved with a calculated grace. If Nadia could do this, Zara thought, then I will be a goddess. She apologized for her past bullying with a humility she didn't feel. It was a strategic move. She needed Nadia to be her bridge. She watched Nadia hand out gifts to the villagers, playing the part of the benevolent queen returning to her humble roots. Zara saw the theater of it all. She saw the surgery in the tilt of Nadia's nose and the fillers in her cheeks. It wasn't kindness that changed Nadia, it was money and a surgeon's knife. That night, Zara didn't sleep. She paced the small room, her eyes narrowed. Nadia was the blueprint, but Zara intended to be the masterpiece. She looked at her own natural features in the dark. 3 months, she promised her reflection. In 3 months, they won't even remember your name, Nadia. You're just my ticket out. The morning of the departure was tense. Zara's mother stood by the door, her face a mask of sorrow. She didn't offer a celebratory feast, she offered a final, grim warning. Some lights are actually fire, Zara. You are chasing a sun that will blind you. I'd rather be blind in a palace than see clearly in a hut, Mama, Zara snapped, throwing her meager belongings into a bag. She felt a surge of adrenaline as she walked toward the black car. Nadia was already waiting, shielded by dark sunglasses. As the car pulled away, the village began to shrink in the rearview mirror. Zara didn't look back. She didn't see her mother's slumped shoulders or Lena waving a hesitant goodbye. She only saw the road ahead. Inside the car, the air conditioning was a revelation. It was the first time in her life she didn't feel the oppressive African sun. Nadia glanced at her, her expression unreadable. "Slow down, Zara," Nadia said softly. "You're looking at the city like it's a buffet, but in the city, you are often the meal. There are rules, there are people you don't cross." "I am a fast learner," Zara replied, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Beauty gets you through the door," Nadia continued, "but it won't keep you in the room. You need to know when to speak and when to disappear." Zara nodded, pretending to absorb the advice. In reality, she was analyzing Nadia's posture, her tone, and the way she handled her phone. She was a predator studying her prey's habits. She wasn't going to the city to be Nadia's protégé. She was going to be her replacement. The rules were for people who didn't have Zara's ambition. She was ready for the fire. The city was a sensory assault. Lagos was louder, dirtier, and more magnificent than Zara had ever dreamed. The skyscrapers scratched the belly of the clouds, and the sheer volume of people made her feel, for the first time, invisible. It was a feeling she hated, yet it thrilled her. Here, she could be anyone. Nadia's apartment was a glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the ocean. Zara walked through the rooms, touching the velvet sofas and the marble countertops. It felt like a movie set. "You'll stay in the guest room," Nadia said. "I've arranged for a stylist to come tomorrow. We need to strip the village off you before I take you to the club on Friday." "The village is already gone," Zara said, staring at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The next few days were a blur of transformation. Zara endured hours of hair extensions, waxings, and fittings. She watched the way Nadia interacted with the help and the way she spoke on the phone to men with deep, gravelly voices. Nadia was a hostess, a term Zara quickly realized meant she was paid to bring beauty and prestige to high-stakes tables. Zara saw the cracks in Nadia's life, the frantic phone calls when a client was unhappy, the pills Nadia took to sleep, the way her hands shook before she applied her makeup. Nadia wasn't a queen, she was a high-end servant. "I won't be a servant," Zara decided. She began taking pictures of herself in Nadia's clothes when Nadia was out. She posted them on social media, tagging the locations Nadia frequented. The likes poured in. Strangers commented on her ethereal beauty. She was building her own brand in the shadows of Nadia's penthouse. The replacement was already manifesting. Friday night arrived. The club, Vanguard, was a cavern of purple light and heavy bass. Zara felt the eyes on her the moment she walked in. She was wearing a dress Nadia had deemed too bold, but Zara had insisted. It was a sliver of silver silk that left nothing to the imagination. Nadia introduced her to a circle of men in bespoke suits. "This is Zara, my little sister from home," Nadia said, her voice tight. "She doesn't look like anyone's little anything," a man named Chief Okan remarked, his eyes roaming Zara's body with the clinical precision of a butcher. Zara didn't flinch. She leaned in, laughing at his jokes, brushing her hand against his arm. She saw Nadia's eyes flash with warning, and perhaps a hint of fear. Nadia was used to being the center of attention, the primary light in the room, but Zara was a supernova. By the end of the night, Chief Okan had ignored Nadia entirely, focusing his wealth and attention on Zara. He promised her a car. He promised her a shopping trip to Dubai. In the car ride home, the silence was suffocating. Nadia didn't speak until they were inside the apartment. "You broke the rules, Zara," Nadia said, tossing her heels aside. "You're just worried he likes me more," Zara said, tossing her heels aside. "You said beauty gets you through the door, while the door is wide open. You have no idea what's behind that door," Nadia whispered. Zara just smiled. She could almost taste the fire. She was no longer the girl from the village, she was the girl the chief wanted, and in this city, that was all that mattered. The Dubai trip happened 2 weeks later. It wasn't a vacation, it was a transaction. Chief Okan bought Zara a wardrobe that could fund a village for a decade. Diamonds, gold, and leather. But in the hotel rooms, away from the flashing lights, the price became clear. The chief was a man of dark moods and absolute control. He didn't want a companion, he wanted a possession. He took Zara's passport for safekeeping. He dictated who she spoke to and what she ate. Zara, however, was playing a deeper game. She used the chief's connections to build her own. While he slept, she used his phone to make contacts. She met influencers and fixers who operated in the city's underbelly. She realized that Nadia had been playing small. Nadia was satisfied with a penthouse and a few designer bags. Zara wanted power. When they returned to Lagos, Zara didn't go back to Nadia's house. She moved into a suite at a boutique hotel, paid for by the chief, but under her own name. She blocked Nadia's number. She didn't need the bridge anymore. She was on the other side. But the trap the old woman spoke of began to tighten. The chief's gifts came with trackers. His security guards were actually jailers. Zara's social media was exploding. Her name whispered in the very rooms she had dreamed of. She was trending, just as Lena had feared. But the whispers weren't about her talent or her brains. They were about whose property she was. The queen was realizing that her crown was made of barbed wire. Yet every time she looked in the mirror, she told herself it was worth it. She was famous, she was rich, she was terrified. The first time Chief Okan struck her, it was because she had posted a photo without his permission. The blow was calculated, aimed at her ribs so it wouldn't ruin her face. Zara lay on the cold marble floor of her suite, gasping for air. The glamour of the city felt like a thin veil being ripped away. She thought of her mother's voice. Some lights are actually fire. She was burning now. She tried to call Nadia, but Nadia had blocked her back. She tried to call her mother, but when she heard the familiar, peaceful sounds of the village through the receiver, the goats, the distant laughter, she hung up. She couldn't admit failure. Her pride was a sturdier cage than the chief's guards. She began to see other girls at the parties, girls younger than her, more desperate, more beautiful. She saw the way the men looked at them, the same way the chief had looked at her that first night at Vanguard. She realized with a jolt of horror that she was already being aged out. In this world, 3 months was a lifetime. She decided she needed an exit strategy. She began stealing small items from the chief, watches, cufflinks, cash, and hiding them. She was going to replace herself before he could replace her. But she underestimated the chief's reach. He didn't just own the hotels, he owned the police, he owned the narrative. One evening, a man she didn't know approached her at a bar. "The chief knows what you're doing, Zara," he whispered. "Greed is a hungry dog. It eventually eats its owner." The words felt like a cold finger tracing her spine. The old woman's prophecy was no longer a joke. Zara's brains were finally being put to use, but not for the dreams she had imagined. She was now a ghost in her own life, navigating a labyrinth of blackmail and survival. She found out that Nadia hadn't just left the village. She had been sold into a debt bondage system that took her years to work off. Nadia wasn't a failure, she was a survivor, and Zara had spat on her for it. The chief's abuse escalated. He took her to private islands where the law didn't exist. Zara saw things that made the village goats seem like high art. She saw the swallowing hole her mother had warned about. Girls disappeared, names were erased. Desperate, Zara reached out to a rival of the chief, a younger man named Julian, who promised her protection. She thought she was being clever, playing one lion against another, but Julian was just a different breed of predator. He wanted the chief's secrets, and he used Zara to get them. She became a spy, a honey trap. She moved through the city's elite circles, her beauty a weapon she hated. She was no longer Zara. She was a code name, a body, a tool. Her skin, once her pride, felt like a shroud. She looked in the mirror and didn't see a queen. She saw a hollowed-out version of the girl who once complained about the price of tomatoes. The replacement she had planned for Nadia had happened, but it was Zara who had been replaced by a monster. The city hadn't given her a life. It had consumed her soul. The door finally opened, just as the old woman said. Julian offered Zara a way out, a one-way ticket to London and a new identity. All she had to do was plant a device in the chief's private office, a device that would record his illegal transactions. "It's your passport to freedom," Julian told her. Zara took the device. She felt a surge of her old ambition. This was it, the final move. She would surpass them all. She would take the chief down and vanish with enough blackmail material to live like a real queen. The night of the heist, the air in the chief's mansion was thick with the scent of lilies, the flowers of death. Zara moved through the shadows, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She reached the office. She planted the device. But as she turned to leave, the lights flickered on. Chief Okan was sitting in his leather chair, a glass of scotch in his hand. Beside him stood Julian, smiling. "Did you really think you were the only one playing, Zara?" Julian asked. It was a setup. Julian wasn't the chief's rival. He was his protege. They used Zara to test their own security, to see how far a greedy village girl would go. The freedom Julian promised was a lie. The ticket to London was a one-way trip to a private prison where the chief kept his discarded toys. "You wanted everyone to know your name," the chief said softly. "By tomorrow, your name will be a warning to every other girl who thinks her face is a currency." The private prison was a villa on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by electrified fences and men with submachine guns. There were 4 other girls there. They didn't speak. They moved like shadows, their eyes dead. Zara spent her days staring at the wall. Her beauty was gone, not because of age, but because of the grayness that had settled into her skin. The fire had burned everything away, leaving only ash. She recalled the pounding of the yam. She thought of the smell of the rain on the village dust. She realized that her mother wasn't trying to keep her poor. She was trying to keep her whole. Contentment wasn't a lack of ambition. It was a shield against the vacuum of the world's greed. One night, one of the other girls, a girl who looked remarkably like a younger Nadia, approached her. "There's a way out," the girl whispered, "but it requires someone to stay behind, someone to distract the guards." Zara looked at the girl. She saw herself, the hunger, the desperation, the beauty. "Go," Zara said. "I'll do it." For the first time in her life, Zara wasn't thinking about being the replacement or the queen. She was thinking about the price. She was finally paying the debt she owed to the people she had stepped on to get here. She realized she couldn't save her life, but she could save her humanity. She gave the girl the small piece of gold she had hidden in her hair, the last gift from the chief. "Take it, run, find a woman named Nadia in the city, and tell her Zara is sorry." The escape was a chaotic blur. Zara set fire to the curtains in the main hall, the very fire her mother had warned her about. As the smoke billowed, she stood in the center of the room, screaming to draw the guards away from the back fence where the younger girl was climbing. The guards found her. They didn't show mercy. But as the flames licked at the ceiling, Zara felt a strange sense of peace. The trap of greed had snapped shut, but in the heat, the bars of her pride were finally melting. She wasn't a queen. She wasn't a replacement. She was just Zara, a girl from a village who wanted too much too fast. She collapsed as the roof began to groan. In her final moments of consciousness, she didn't see the city lights. She saw the goats crossing the road in the village. She saw the sun setting over the hills. She saw her mother's face, calm and beautiful in a way that no surgery could ever replicate. The fire consumed the villa. It made the news for a single day, a tragic accident at a private residence. No names were mentioned. The city swallowed the story whole, just as it had swallowed the girls. Zara wanted strangers to whisper her name, but in the end, she became a ghost in a city that had no memory. Back in the village, life continued. The thud-thud of the pestle remained the heartbeat of the morning. Zara's mother sat by the door, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She didn't cry. She knew the moment the car pulled away that she had already lost her daughter. Lena visited often. They rarely spoke of Zara. The pain was too sharp, like a shard of glass in the throat. One afternoon, a young girl from the neighboring compound stopped by. She was beautiful, perhaps even more beautiful than Zara had been. She looked at the reflection in a bucket of water and sighed. "I can't wait to leave this place," the girl muttered. "I saw a picture of a girl in the city. She had everything: diamonds, cars, fame." Zara's mother looked at the girl. She saw the same hunger, the same dangerous light in the eyes. "Sit down," she ordered, her voice firm. "Let me tell you a story about a girl who thought her beauty was a passport." The girl frowned, fanning herself against the heat. "Is it a story about success?" "No," the mother said, looking at the road where the black car had once disappeared. "It's a story about the price of a soul. It's a story about a light that was actually a fire." The cycle was beginning again, but as the mother spoke, a single tear finally escaped. The village was still there, the tomatoes were still expensive, and the goats still crossed the road. The world hadn't bowed. It had simply moved on. Kindly share your thoughts about this story with me in the comments section. Tell me what lesson you've learned from this story and what country you're watching us from. Please subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories that teach, inspire, and entertain. Until next time, bye-bye.